right, hello everyone, and welcome to the second workshop in the Storyteller series that is a three-part workshop series. Before I introduce Giizhigad, our workshop facilitator and presenter, I just wanted to go over a few logistics about the series. So CASC is the host for the series, and our co-sponsors are the School Social Work Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, and the School Social Work Office of Educational Programs. Our first workshop was on oral histories with Beth James, and that is recorded for anyone that's interested. That will be on the CASC homepage, and it's on the School Social Work YouTube channel currently. And our next workshop will be April 7th in person in the School Social Work building. So this workshop is called Music as a Storyteller, and it's with Annie Humphrey, who is an award-winning singer, songwriter, and activist. And also, I really apologize for the error in the confirmation email with the wrong time for an hour later today, but this workshop is being recorded. And for anyone that may have missed part of today's workshop. And I would like to introduce our featured guest for today. And I've known Giizhigad for many years for her work with Indigenous youth, Anishinaabe storytelling, traditional dancing, cultural organizer, photographer, singer, and digital and video artist. Okay. So Giizhigad is an Anishinaabe artist, filmmaker, and cultural producer based in Detroit. As a storyteller through the main medium of film, she's building a practice of filmmaking that actively embodies liberation by utilizing a creative process that is participatory, organic, and emergent, and how the stories and people on the other side of the lens are in active engagement, dialogue, dance, and solidarity with the creative concepts conveyed. Her cultural work and organizing has included Anishinaabe-based storytelling, language revitalization, environmental justice, and healing justice work. Her praxis in storytelling is rooted in her ancestral knowledge systems as an Anishinaabe person, where stories travel through space-time and their meaning and lessons are multidimensional. Stories have the capacity to heal, educate, as well as spark creativity, movement, and change. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Giizhigad.
Thank you so much, Diana. And hello, everyone. Bonjour. It's lovely to be here. It's an honor to be here sharing with all of you for this workshop. And I'm just gonna get my screen and everything going. But as Diana shared, I identify as a story weaver and am exploring the different ways to share stories. I love all forms of stories, both traditional and contemporary. And my main medium is through film. My pronouns are she, they. Thank yous for those of you who are putting your pronouns in your name boxes. It is wonderful to see you all. And yeah, so this presentation, I am just going to weave some stories. I'm going to hop in and out of stories themselves and also talk a little bit about different Anishinaabe concepts that I think will be illuminating and also help us think about liberation, movement building, and creativity, and hopefully bring us into a very inspirational space. So yes, and everything that I shared today is just based from me as a human being. I'm an Anishinaabe person, so a lot of my stuff comes from that, those concepts as well as my lived experience. And my goal in life is to be like water in my community and just always evolving, shaping, and forming to the needs of the present moment, and basically seeking to be in good relationship with all of my kin. And also this presentation will use an interactivity using Menti Meter, which I will copy and paste the link in the chat. If you have access to your computer, you can click this link to be able to answer some of the interactive questions that I have throughout the presentation. Which the first one will be a check-in. And so if you follow that link, oh no, I don't have my check-in question. Okay, we're gonna use the chat for the first check-in question. But the first check-in is just like, how are you feeling today? Or what is the mantra that you're bringing in today? And if everyone could just take a moment before they answer that question in the chat box and really dig deep into your being, feel your feet connected to the earth. And let's take a collective breath together, deeply inhaling and exhaling, just feeling a lot of gratitude and connecting deeply within ourselves for that answer, because this storytelling is all about deep connection. And so being really honest with ourselves and what we want to share, and also want to honor the fact that we create our realities. So if there's a mantra you're living by today that you want to throw in the chat, please do. All right. Patience. Patience, mindful, contentment. Oh, I am grounded and rooted. Beautiful mantra. All right, so we can continue to put our mantras and feelings in the chat as we move forward. And we will start with my first story that I have to share, which is a film.
Anishinaabe are the stories of our everyday lives. They are the expressions of our heart truths, radiating outward to the world. I have recently felt the weight of the importance of sharing our personal story. These stories are our agency, our autonomy, and our self-determination. Within our personal story are the beautiful and spiritual connections that hold us all together. For a long time, I have lived in fear. I have lived beneath the shadow of other people's lives. I have lived for the expectations of those around me, with the concerns of what other people may think of me, their perceptions, and all of that energy of fear simply stifled my growth, and it blocked my expression, my connection with the divine, my true being. It's time that I tell my story. My Gashe is always telling me, hey, you should write that down. All these things that are happening in your life, you should really write that down. I was recently told by a mentor of mine to just write, let it flow onto the pages, just write until I can't write anymore, just to express and empty my mind so that I can be one with the cosmos, so that I can have this beautiful connection with the divine, with spirit, that creative energy can flow through me. This is the beginning of me spilling that story onto the pages so that I can be free. I send love to everyone else who is tackling the question, who am I? It's okay if you're still working on your self-actualization. Time is a circle, life is a spiral, and wherever you are at, it's okay. Love to everyone on their journey. This is the beginning of one of mine, the liberation of Giizhigad.
Okay, so that was my first story. And now if you got a chance to click on the link in the Menti Meter and let me know, how did this story make you feel? Determined, connected, relief, excitement, inspired, okay to be vulnerable, calm. Awesome. Okay, and then I have one more. Oh my gosh, it's like celebrating our answering. I didn't know I was gonna do that. What? I'm missing my second question. Well, my second question, and this could be answered in the chat, or if anyone wants to come off mute, I welcome your perspectives. But my second question is, what do you think storytelling can be used for? Or another frame is, why is storytelling powerful? Either of those questions, I would love to hear your thoughts. So what can storytelling be used for? Or why is storytelling powerful? I think from the word cloud, we already begin to see a little bit of the power of storytelling, right? It can evoke feeling, a sense of connection, gaining insight, creating community and feeling connection with others. Absolutely. I think storytelling can be helpful for teaching, bringing people together and creating empathy. Beautiful. We can learn from people that have different experiences and upbringings. We can also become more connected to others. Absolutely. So let's continue with some more deep diving into storytelling. So in that story, the first word I share is Debajimoan, and I want to make a differentiation between these two Ojibwe words. So Atazokan are sacred stories and Debajimoan are personal stories. So Atazokan are stories that share about creation for Anishinaabe people, where things come from. The characters are spiritual, they're animals, they're plants, etc. But they have this sacred nature of coming to different knowledge systems. And Debajimoan are our personal stories, as I shared in the video, like anything that happens throughout our day. Like these stories are shared all the time, even when someone just asks, how are you doing, right? Like we have an opportunity to share our personal story, and how deep we go is up to us. And all of the knowledge and things that I'll be referencing in this presentation is from, this is my Ojibwe Bible, is what I call it, but it's called Dancing on Our Turtle's Back by Leanne Simpson. So a lot of the concepts are really coming from there, as well as from my elders and lived experience, but in case you want to reference that book. But she talks about how Debajimo and Echo Adezokan, so our personal creation stories, our lives mirror and reflect creation. And so I'm thinking if our stories are mirrors of creation, then our stories are also mirrors of one another. And so we learn from hearing each other's stories and connecting with them. So essentially, stories are all about relationships. And when we hear stories, we are able to insert ourselves into them. I'm also really into neuroscience and learning about the brain. And so actually when we hear stories, our brains will fire neurons that are as if we are experiencing the story ourselves. And so I think that's really fascinating, and it goes along with all of our indigenous teachings around the power of storytelling. So what we do is we insert ourselves into these stories and we start to assume responsibilities. And these responsibilities are according to our sacred gifts, our purpose in the world, what we have to offer. And the cool thing is they're not given to us by the demands of others. So it's not our relatives that are being like, you need to do this and you need to do that. But we come into this space of collective consciousness where we honor exactly who we are, and we're able to come as our full selves in reflection to the cosmos and our relatives. So it is still a sense of responsibility to our kin, but it comes from a place of power. And I think that's what's really important, especially when we're talking about liberation and we're talking about people building power to have their own agency in life. And that's what we learn from our stories. And Elder Edna Manitowabe, she shares that to learn is to wear our teachings. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately, about embodied knowledge is what matters. And it's a process, right? So it's all about embodiment of Mino Bimazuan. And Mino Bimazuan means to live well, but it also means a continuous rebirth. So I think that's really beautiful how in our teachings, we are taught that life is a process, that we are expected to make mistakes, expected to grow and to transform. And so this is all a part of the journey. And we find that through the process of storytelling. Next, I want to share a concept called Anjagone. Anjagone is an ethic of non-interference. And so this is kind of like why we tell stories in the first place in Anishinaabe culture. So it's the idea that one needs to be very careful with making judgments and with the act of criticism. And so the ethic of non-interference is like we teach by telling a story, right? So like our elders, instead of like shaming us or make us feel bad for making a mistake and saying, you can't be doing that, they will just go into this long story and they won't say anything about us as a personal being, but they will teach us the lesson we need to hear. And the reason for this is it comes from our spiritual truth and our understanding that our spiritual being may take on the very things we're criticizing in others. So it comes from a sense of humility and like also the idea, as I shared earlier, like we create our realities, right? Like the whole idea of having a mantra or the whole idea is to be in positivity, like being what we want our worlds to look like. Like we can't keep organizing and critiquing everything without having an alternative one, but also like having spaces where we're able to practice the alternatives. And so this is where this comes from, being careful before we judge and critique and making sure we're embodying, but also it allows for agency and autonomy of the learner. Because if we can't expect change in the world and in the universe if we don't allow people to come to those lessons of their own autonomy and their own power and them to be able to embody those things that we're all learning and growing in. And so the process of storytelling allows for this embodiment to occur. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions before I go on? I know that was quite a few little concepts I put in there about storytelling. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know, or reactions or thoughts. Alrighty. If not, I will go into a story, which there was a little precursor, but this story is about Save, also known as Sasquatch or Bigfoot. But this story comes from a story about Nanabojo when he was like going on this really long journey. So Nanabojo is kind of like our trickster character, sort of like Jesus, like walked the creation and named all the things and was learning things. But Nanabojo is a trickster because he's very foolish and like learns lots of lessons on his journey. But this is about the moment that he was on that journey and he met Bigfoot. And so I will just go into it. But he met a bunch of other people, but I'm only going to speak to this one part of the story, and I'm just going to read it. So, Wanabojo dozed off, but soon awoke with a start, as if someone or something had prodded him. He looked around slowly. Even though he did not see anything, he knew he was not alone. Suddenly, he noticed that just out of his direct eyesight was a being, a huge dark figure with red eyes that peered out of a shadowy face. Again, he felt his fear rising to an uncontrollable level. He wanted to run. He thought fleetingly of defending himself, of fighting. But violence was unknown to the world at that time. He was able to control both his fear and terror, but still, he felt a new strange sensation. What was this strange feeling that possessed him? For the first time in many years, violence was evident on Earth. But with Wanabojo, it was only a thought. He was able to put it aside. Violence, which is the twin of peace, must always be secondary and subservient to peace, just as it was with Wanabojo. The shadowy being spoke. I am Bugwajanene, wild man. Some of the people who follow you will know me as Sasquatch or Yeti, but they will seldom see me. It will be forbidden for them to look into my eyes. Some will never know of me. Many will not believe that I exist. I am your oldest brother. I have been with you on your journey. I have been ahead of you at times and behind you at times. Sometimes I have watched you walk by. The Creator sent me here to guide and care for those who become lost. I am to watch over those who go into the forests, swamps, hills, mountains, to gather medicines and other things. I am also to help those who choose to meditate, pray, and fast in the wild and natural places. I'm the caretaker of these places. Little brother, I have watched your journey and have known your thoughts. I will tell you of some, but not all of the things that you have wondered about. And then Bugwajanene continues on telling Nanabojo many, many things. But I wanted to focus on the last thing that he said. And he says, it is time for you to continue your journey. I will be with you, little brother, wherever your steps may take you. There's one last thing I wish to leave you, and then we shall never talk again. You have a twin brother, whom you have wondered about and whom you would seek. This I tell you, he is your other side in all things and in all ways. He is with you. Do not seek him. Do not wish to know him, but understand him. You will walk the path of peace. He would not. You are kind. He is not. You are humble. He is not. You are generous. he is not. You seek the good things, he does not. You shall respect others, and he will not. You will seek the goodness in others, he will not. You are the light, he is the darkness, but know that he is with you. Understand him, but do not seek him. With that, Bagwajanene left went Nanabojo and vanished like a shadow into the woods. And so this is the story of the first time that Nanabojo met Sabe in the forest. Any reactions or things you heard or learned from that? That is the Atazokan, a traditional sacred story.
I can start it out. I think it was really interesting.
Yeah.
The last lesson I had around the twin, because I feel like it's almost like our two choices in a way of like, who do we choose to be? Do we choose to be like seek out the lightness or seek out the darkness, or to be the seeking goodness or looking for the bad thing? So like I feel like I just was really fascinated by the idea of using the idea of having a twin, but also to me it sounded like what do we choose? Like we have a choice as to how we be in the world. That's what I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about others?
Any other thoughts or reactions to this story?
Yeah, let me know if you can't hear me. My cat's purring very loudly right by my microphone. I felt something similar, but not maybe also that we have a choice, but that this sort of dark pairing of us is always present, and that it's okay to accept that. And in that, to me, I think there's a lot of freedom in knowing that that part of us is there. There's nothing wrong with you if it's there, but that you don't have to like follow that side of you.
Cool. Yeah, it's an interesting story to share. I absolutely love Sabe, I love Bigfoot and these teachings because they're very interesting to me. The other thing was like right at the beginning, it was like violence, because this is like right after creation was made and when Aboja was like on this journey, and so it's like violence wasn't a thing yet, but he felt like this need to act out of violence and like follow his fear and like lash back to protect himself. And so it like reminds me of the ego and how we have this thing inside us that wants to protect us based on the traumas that we've been through, but sometimes it's just not following the right path, or it's not quite in reality. So there's many layers of things to this story, but I wanted to share it to kind of show a sacred story and how it moves, and also how it affected me as a person. And like then I kind of made a little story, so social media can be a place where people share stories. So I was like on a walk in the wooded area and just was like noticing how beautiful the shadow was. And the story, I didn't read parts of it, but it mentions the shadow. So our twin is our shadow. It is a dark part of ourselves. And I was just noticing this as I was walking, and like wanted to take this picture of me reaching out to my own shadow, like kind of as you were sharing, like being okay with this part of ourselves, like reaching my hand out, like, hey, it's okay that you're here. You know, you are part of me, acknowledging that. And that also sometimes it takes intentional work into our shadows. And I'm thinking about this in terms of, you know, the movement towards collective liberation at times requires us both to look at our own privileges as people, and also just acknowledging the roots of some of this stuff, right? Because we can build movements against capitalism and stuff, but we also need to address our own greed, address our own desires. And so this picture for me was that, and that was all in that story, was just like, acknowledge it, know it, do that hard work, and move towards whatever it is, the visions that we see for our communities that are filled with liberation and connection, and that we can live well together. So wanted to share like how stories can move and transform, and how they could be somewhere where, you know, you don't even see it, like no one can see Bigfoot in this, but that's exactly where I got all of this from. And so I wanted to bring light to stories moving and transforming like that. And then a few more thoughts about resistance, because with that last share about Anjagone, like the teaching of non-interference can sometimes feel like, where does resistance have a place in the movement or in our teachings, like as Anishinaabe? But remembering that our ancestors resisted by holding on to our stories, right? And there's layers to this. They literally hold on to our stories so that we have something like to listen to, like Bigfoot story, but they also like trust the teachings and the cosmos, that they are going to unfold throughout time and space, regardless of, you know, the settler colonial violence that has happened, or regardless of the present political moment. Like, there are tools that we can use right now to decolonize, to envision new worlds, and we just need to tap into them. And so I wanted to say that Anjagone is not necessarily counter resistance, but maybe resistance has multiple ways of looking in the world. And storytelling is a lens for us to envision our way out of cognitive imperialism. So like, we're able to tap into a space where we can think outside of the box, or differently than the boxes that we're conditioned to based on settler colonialism, based on all of these things. Our minds have a way of thinking, and sometimes it can be difficult to imagine new things, and the stories allow for us to get to that space. Also, storytelling in Ojibwe traditions and lots of indigenous people groups is oral. So the process itself is participatory. People are gathering together to hear these stories. And this binary between the storyteller and listener also becomes blurred and dissolves away. And so we can apply this to everything. How can we learn from the process of storytelling of how to dissolve other binaries? And so this is what I seek to do with the stories that I'm weaving now with film, is like, how do I start to dissolve the binary, especially between human and non-human kin? Because I think with environmental justice, the whole indigenous front is like, we are the water and the water is us. And like, we are meeting the front lines with prayers. We're meeting the front lines with like these concepts that are difficult for people to understand or understand, that we are relatives with the water. And so I want to make stories that start to bubble up in the spirit and start to make people feel their relationality in new ways. Other thing that can come up a lot for especially oppressed peoples is shame for not measuring up, and specifically in relation to resistance, because we've built kind of these Western applications of what resistance looks like, what mobilization looks like. And so, you know, at Standing Rock, when people are praying at the water, it's just like not typical ways of movement building. And but sometimes we get into a trap of thinking that we're not good enough for doing things in this different way, or that it might not be effective, right? Like, for creating change, But when this happens, like it's shame that is making us not able to see our ancestors and see our philosophies as valid. And then settler colonialism is continuing to do its work. And so we're losing the power of storytelling. But if we come back, all of these things are valid and we are enough. Yep, and I already talked about all of those things, but these are just a glimpse into like why I do storytelling work and how I continue to seek to refine my methods for weaving stories and building in this way. Okay, now another concept is also about learning. And this word Giizhigad is an important way of teaching, and it's more important than telling or directing. So similar to Anjagone, but Giizhigad is the art of showing someone something to act or to show how something is done through modeling. So we teach through our own embodiment of our knowledge systems. And good relations provide the context for everything, from learning to governing and interacting with other nations. And with that, I would like to share another story that does this. Lessons from the Ogawak or the Walleye Nation. So I will play this one, and this will be the last formal story that I share.
It is 8:30 a.m. and we drove through the night to Minnesota. We are headed to see our family and to learn about our fish relatives because the walleye are running. So we're gonna go learn how to steward the land in that way. So yeah, tired. How you feeling?
Driving. I'm feeling great. I slept through tonight.
Bonjour, my name is Annie Humphrey, but I have an Indian name that my brother gave me, and it's Mamagoyashka. And it means the sound of a windstorm on the water. You can't really see it, you can hear it. And I live on the Leech Lake reservation. And I've lived here all my life, except for the 4 years I was in the Marine Corps. And I lived in Wisconsin for a while. But I was raised by my parents. My father was a old school Indian, and my mom is an artist and a poet and an author, and so I kind of got, gifts from both of my parents. And we always lived really close to the land. It's such a great life. And my father made sure that every season he made sure we were out, getting our stuff. And my parents were young and they had kids right after another. So they were always toting us around with them. We went, and we have pictures of us in the woods, in boxes, tied to a sled in a box, collecting sap with my mom. This time of year, it's late fall here, and when the waters get cold, the water temperatures go down, it's time to net walleye, and we throw in 200-foot nets in the evening, about this time of day, and we retrieve them in the morning right at sunrise, and because the fish come in and they feed, and so that's what we were about these last few days. They're in deep all summer, and then they come into the shallows when the water temperature gets colder because they want to feed, and then after it's really cold, that's all them.
Say again. So underneath the fin.
Under the little armpit, and you're gonna cut, and you kind of go at an angle. There's a lot of meat back here. You don't want to go this way, you miss all this.
Okay.
There's meat there, and then you cut down their spine, and you'll feel the bones. Yeah, I'm going as far till my knife hits bone. And but keep this parallel to the deck, and then when you pass this fin on the bottom, at some point it's gonna go all the way through. You'll feel it. It's going. There it went. So now you keep it, and you want to cut all the way down to here, and but then stop right there because we're going to use that for leverage later. Okay, then come up here, and you'll feel the bones in the ribs. I guess those are ribs. I'm not sure what they're called in a fish, but yeah, they cover all. You cut around that, and your knife. You know the anatomy kind of guides you because you'll feel the bones.
It just moves.
Did it? It's probably just nerves. It's just nerves.
It's good for this.
And then come around, and then you come around the bend. There's something in my way here. And then you come around. And you open up to silver.
Open up to silver.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There's silver. And then separate it down. You kind of want to miss his butthole right there.
That's his butt?
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say. You look like you're missing the bow there.
Yeah, miss that.
Why is my butt not here? You look abused so much.
And then I keep it connected. Some people cut it all the way up. My brother taught me this. Keep it connected. And then, yeah, and then you just go. Otherwise, it's hard to get a grip. You got to try to get your thumb in there, but now look, that's holding my thread.
You cut the skin off.
Yep, I cut off the skin. And this bag is kind of fluffy. Then you'll feel right here. You go like this up, then you'll feel bone press hard.
Yeah, I feel it.
Okay, so here. Then, yep, and it stops right about there. So what do we do? Cut that bone out so we don't have any bones in this fish.
This experience is extraordinary in ways that I can't describe with words. Having the opportunity to heal my body, I'm having the blessed opportunity to build relationships with my indigenous native cousins, deepening that, as well as this surreal feeling of synchronicity with the universe and that which sustains us all, and the life that's given to sustain my life.
Being here, learning about our lifeways and the walleye is very inspiring to me. When filleting the fish, I feel at peace. I feel interconnected with all our relations. And it just feels natural. It feels good to my spirit to be working in this way, connecting with our food. I'm grateful to Annie and her family for sharing this knowledge with us and keeping these lifeways and traditions alive.
When you guys come from Detroit, I just think it's really cool. I mean, you come here and you're one of us. We're the same people, but you're so respectful and graceful and gracious and humble in your approach to us, you know, all here. I just, it makes me want to, like, yeah, come back, can we do this next? Come back, can we do this next? And, you know, let's make a blanket, because that has to happen now. And our, you know, the winter time is our sewing time and our beating time, and our, so I guess it's in your heart, it's how they speak to you. Because, you know, there are people living out here, and I'm talking about on the reservation, who don't got time, you know. So maybe it's not even a geographic thing. Maybe it's just like what's calling you. You listen to it or not.
Any thoughts or reactions from this story? Okay, well, I will share just a few things from that story and that experience. And this is like the other style of filmmaking that I have, is more documentary style, but like this is also the reason why I had that just playing of like flaying the fish and he's going through directions, is because it's also like archival to me. It's like, oh, if someone's in the bush and if our food system collapse and we need to learn how to do this because people are so disconnected from the earth that we don't know how to do this, like it's just straight up instructions and a video so you can see how to logically do this. And like seeing it brings my spirit so much happiness, because that whole thing was also about the connections with that trip with my relatives. You know, cracking jokes in the kitchen, having a lightheartedness to life. But there's also stuff you don't see, right? Because I had to put that content warning. I know it's like a bit graphic for some folks, and like I had to put that content warning because I do martial arts, and in my dojo almost everyone's a vegan. So I put the content warning on there for my family. But it's like also the moments where you realize your humanity, because it's like in this world there's an imperialism and colonial violence, there's senseless killing, and it is not the same thing as, you know, fishing. And also the emotional thing, because one of Annie's daughters went through an emotional moment like seeing these fish pass away and crying, because it is really sad. Like, it's a life has given its life for you. And that's why I say teachings from the Ogawa Nation, because our fish, they're a nation of themselves, and they make the decision to give food to us. And like, honestly, people are probably the most the most pitiful of creation. Like, the other ones are just so, they're so giving, and they're so just in how they move and how they understand the ebb and flow of creation and destruction. And like, we could learn a lot from these moments, and these moments of realizing our own humanity, that we one day too will walk on, will pass away. And this cycle of life, it's very harmful, I think, to be disconnected from it. And so that experience taught me a lot of humility, and it taught me a lot of care in a part of me that, you know, facing the things, because I think in this world, we don't have to face the things that give us the privileges that we have. Like, there's a lot that's happening that's harmful, that allows us to sit where we sit and to really uncover these things, work with the complexities of life, and to become, just to transform and change how we are. So this is like some of the layers of why I tell stories, how I do it, why I do it. And yeah, thank you for listening to me, and just open the close for any questions, comments, or any sharing. But it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Giizhigad. Does anyone have any questions before we close?
Oh, that's beautiful, Latoya. Thank you for being here. And yes, we are telling a collective story. It's so wonderful.
22 facilitators.
Okay, so thanks everyone that shared and was able to make it, even if it was for a short period of time. This has been recorded, so anyone that would like to see the entire thing, I'll be sending it out to the RSVP list. If everyone could briefly take themselves off mute and say, kind of give your gratitude, appreciation, any word and of thanks and appreciation for Giizhigad for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a bunch.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much.